GDPR, it stands for the General Data Protection Regulation. This regulation was adopted by the EU Parliament on April 14 of 2016. The Parliament then gave member states and any impacted organization 2 years to comply with the regulation. Since May 25, 2018, the provisions of the GDPR have been enacted. It contains 99 articles covering basic data privacy for all European Union citizens. Scope: every organization doing business with the European Union is in scope, no matter their size or their industry. In terms of data, any personal data that is being collected, analyzed, stored, etc., is included in this regulation. As for the systems included, any system, whether it's automated or manual, will require data mapping is included under this tenet. In terms of data, any personal data that is being collected, analyzed, stored, etc., is included in this regulation. In terms of exclusions, personal data that is needed by law enforcement or for national security would not be covered under this regulation. Anyone involved in processing personal data about individuals in the EU must comply, whether or not they're located in the EU, the US, or anywhere else in the world. Penalty: companies can be fined up to 4% of their annual revenue or €20 million. Again, whichever is higher. The GDPR will provide protections for children under 16 by requiring parental consent before a child's personal data can be collected by a company. Data Protection Officer is an individual who has independent authority to oversee a company's compliance with GDPR. The minimum tenure of the Data Protection Officer is 2 years. That can be renewed for a maximum of 5 terms or up to 10 years. They must inform data subjects about their rights and raise awareness of the regulation. They must also advise their institution about the application of the GDPR rules. They must do prior checks of risks and have a list of operations that the organization will undertake. They must help the institution be accountable to the governing agency. The Data Protection Officer must also answer any questions and handle complaints. Finally, in the case of an investigation, the Data Protection Officer must help with the cooperation between their organization and the governing agency. As we can see, the Data Protection Officer role is embedded in an organization's ability to maintain compliance with GDPR. Data Subject Rights, DSRs, rights designed to give individuals greater control over their data. This includes the right to be forgotten, access, portability, restriction of processing, rectify, and object. Access: controllers must allow for data subjects to access their data on request. This is called a subject access request. There cannot be a charge for these access requests. One exception is if a data subject makes too many requests or there are an excessive number of them, it allows controllers to charge a reasonable fee. Data subjects can also request a copy. A requested copy serves as confirmation of the data that is being processed. Correction: data subjects have the right to rectify data that is inaccurate or to have any incomplete data completed. This is done by providing a supplementary statement outlining the requested changes. If the inaccurate information was disclosed to a third party, the controller must inform the third party of that correction where possible. Right to be forgotten: deletion is allowed when processing no longer has a lawful basis. Data can sit in storage after it's used, and some data subjects may want it deleted rather than leave it under someone else's custody. Objection applies based on legitimate or public interest. One situation included in objection is for direct marketing purposes. A data subject can object to this at any time. Other situations are for society services and for scientific or research purposes. Once a request for objection is received, the controller must stop their processing activities. Portability: data subjects can receive their data and have the right to transmit that data to another controller without hindrance upon request. Data should be transferred anywhere it is technically feasible, without prejudice. Prompt response: the controller has 30 days to respond to data requests. Data Protection Impact Assessment, DPIA, a privacy review process of products or features to ensure GDPR compliance before they go live. This includes the right to be forgotten, access, portability, restriction of processing, rectify, and object. Privacy Shield, an agreement between the European Union and the United States that sets out standards for handling European citizens' data in Europe or using another transfer mechanism, such as standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules. Privacy Champion, a person who represents a dedication and passion for privacy and empowers others to respect privacy. There are two primary groups of organizations covered under GDPR in terms of processing data: data controllers and data processors. Data controllers have responsibility for control over personal data. They are, in effect, the data owners. They have ultimate accountability for the safety of that data. Some of the tasks that a data controller is responsible for is to ensure they have compliance. Data processors are engaged by controllers to obtain, analyze, and store data on the controller's behalf. You can think of them as third-party vendors, such as a managed service or a software product. Lawful basis is a reason for processing data that's justified in law. It's not a law in and of itself but is justified by the law in place. It has law behind it to ensure it meets minimum standards. There are 6 bases for processing data under GDPR. Consent is voluntary and can be revoked at any time by the data subject. Contractual necessity, whereby an organization is performing processing to fulfill a contractual obligation to another organization. Legal obligations, that occur under European Union law. Protect vital interest, I think of this like a psychiatrist. Your data is private unless you are doing harm to yourself or to others. Legitimate interest, this will be a compelling reason for businesses that work with one another and have to transfer data between each other. Public interest, when thinking of a compelling ground that overrides the freedoms of a data subject. Breach notification. The regulation outlines that if a data subject's rights of data privacy are at risk, an organization is required to notify those citizens about the situation. GDPR outlines a 72-hour notification period. This period begins upon becoming aware of a potential incident impacting data subjects' data privacy.